I Want to Jump Like Dee Dee, with me, Giles Sibbald, is the music podcast that does music a bit differently. I'm talking to some incredible musicians, DJs and producers about how they use an experimental mindset to fuel their own creativity, pursue new challenges, overcome fears, bounce back from mistakes.
Gigs were a bit hard to come by in 2020, weren't they? I first saw my guest perform live when she supported the Sleaford Mods at the 100 Club in September of that year, with a physical crowd of fans that numbered precisely bugger all, really. It was one of those live streams that at the time was 100% what the doctor had ordered, and she played with such charisma, like this perfectly DIY, raw and defiant intensity with kind of like gallows humour, vulnerability. It was for me, it was like a sort of perfectly razor sharp crossover that gave me this sort of feeling that she's given herself a massive amount of freedom to do musically, to do whatever she wants. Her second album, Cacti, is released on 13th of January. Actually, cacti are my favourite plants, do you know? Actually, yeah. I've no excuse not to buy a T-shirt now, anyway. So, and it's wonderful to see that freedom flourishing into what is really a fantastic record. So, with a monotonous degree of predictability, I'm going to shut up now and welcome Tor Maurice, aka Billy Nomates, to the show. Thank you so much for coming on. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
It's funny looking back at those streams. I get like a slightly weird, in a way, slightly uneasy feeling about them, probably because it represents a sort of moment in time. How do you feel? Yeah. I mean, it really was. I mean, I remember at that time, it was such a great feeling watching that whole kind of show. How do you feel looking back at that now?
Similar in that it's all a bit weird, because it's like what we were doing was kind of just putting something on because we didn't know if it was the end of the world.
Yeah, wasn't it? Yeah,
we didn't know we were ever going to get it back. Like, so it's really twinned with like excitement for doing it, but also like just that total uncertainty and strangeness. And ultimately, like, I did a few streams in lockdown having the album and stuff, and I remember it because it was kind of my first intro to that world as well. And I remember like deeply on a like real cellular level feeling the sadness of everybody. So like you go to a venue or the crew that are all out of work, all no idea what's going on. Artists that are like kind of all just sat at home in jeopardy. And just remember feeling how sad everyone was. And that sticks with me quite a lot when I think back to that time, because everyone was just so worried. Yeah. So that's weird, because you then go, I brought my energy and my music into that, and I tried to meet it and bang against it. But also, a few years on from that, you need a minute to process what the hell that was all about.
What it was about, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess like going into a venue as well as, that's just a shell is it's kind of weird as well. And I guess when you go into load in, you're sort of used to that. There's nobody in really, but then that doesn't change. You don't have the crowd filling it up.
It was really weird because I didn't really know what it was like to have a crowd in a way. I'd started Billy Nomates as something where it was just me.
That's true.
Recording my rehearsals on my phone and just putting all my energy into it, and just that's what it was. So in a way, I was quite well prepped for it.
That's a good point, though. Yeah.
What I didn't know was the crowd. Like, I'd never had that. So in a way, it was like, well, I'll just do what I've always done. And then getting used to a crowd a year later was the hard thing.
Yeah.
Because then all of a sudden you've got to slot that in. But
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so it's weird because it's all a bit back. I'm a bit back to front in general anyway, but it's all really back to front.
That was back to front. I was thinking actually when I was prepping for this, I was looked over there. I was like, "Fuck, that's where I saw Billy Nomates and Sleaford Mods, like the TV.
Right, yeah,
This is where I
yeah.
experienced them. It's weird.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's really odd, and it's twinned with a lot of emotions, and that whole first album is as well.
Mm,
I have serious detachment issues from all of that,
mm, yeah,
and I think it's just my mind trying to be nice to me, going, "Don't remember it," because
yeah.
it's really intense.
I guess our brains do that. They have that sort of that it's what fear's about, isn't it? I suppose, like that kind of protective
Yeah, I know.
thing for us.
I understand why it's done it, which is even worse.
You are getting to understand your brain.
Oh God, who's the servant? Who's the master? I don't know.
Oh my. So moving on now, obviously we've got we'll talk a little bit about the new record, which is from when we're talking now is just over a week away, and it's I've listened to it. To me, it feels a much more vulnerable record.
Sure.
Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely, it would be.
Mm.
Yeah,
Well,
it's yeah. I've definitely tried to lean into the more vulnerable aspects of me as a writer, and I've said it before, but it's always come from a vulnerable place. But I think
mm,
sonically, maybe I've represented that a bit better this time,
mm.
with the pace of things or the subject of things. Yeah, it's not. There's no front to this album.
Yeah, yeah. I think you said. Yeah, I think you're representing things differently. I guess this is your part of your evolution. As a as you yourself as a person, and then musically as well.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, yeah. I hope that it's captured a moment in time. It's captured certain feelings and situations and where I am
Mm,
in my life. And I won't be here again. So,
mm.
um,
Of course, it
yeah,
was you wrote it about a year ago, didn't
yeah,
you? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I started it sort of uh, end of 21, really,
Mm.
and then pretty much all of last year, and then yeah, God, which 2020? It's 2023.
I
My
know, it's mind
God,
blowing, isn't it? It's
it's
mind blowing.
totally. Oh God, like what has happened for 3 years? I don't really understand. Um, yeah, so it's been written over a year, and so it has. It's just been such a changing like we've had such an odd 3 years. No, like
Mm,
each of them have been really strange and odd, and none of them have been. We kind of went through 2020, and then 21 where it was still not okay. Then
mm.
last year we were kind of balancing out and making sense of it all. And I hope
Yeah,
that this year will be the one where we've addressed some of the trauma we've just been
yeah.
through.
Just been through. Yeah,
We're
totally.
like
Yeah.
a little bit more better, but I don't know, because then the other sort of total, uh, you know, pessimist in me goes, "Oh, is it going to get worse? Like, was that the tip of the iceberg?" You know.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
I mean, you put so much of yourself and show so much of yourself in in your music. Go back to when your younger days when you were a kid and sort of growing up. I mean, what were your real kind of formative influences? Either people that you hung out with or particular events or where you lived, that kind of thing.
When I was very young, it was always my dad. My dad was a local music teacher at the comprehensive school, and
Mm,
it was my dad that raised my brother, sister, and me.
yeah.
Pretty much as a single parent, and
Mm,
which is an unusual dynamic, really, for some people. And so my entire introduction to music is through him. We had no money ever.
Yeah.
But we had an upright piano in the house that Dad had got secondhand that was slightly out of tune.
Yeah.
To this day, it causes me problems because I do everything by ear. I can't read music at all, and so I place everything slightly where that piano placed it. So when I'm tuning any instrument, it's always slightly detuned.
Interesting.
But in tune with itself.
Yeah.
Because when I've tried to like sometimes have players on stuff, they're like, that's really out of tune, and I'm like, I wasn't aware of that.
Wow, that's incredible.
And a lot of my music is, I haven't corrected some of it. A lot of stuff on Cacti, if you try and pitch it, you'll be having to play around with tuning a lot.
That's brilliant. That keeps everybody on their toes, that.
Keeps me on my toes. Try and fucking recreate something. I'm like, I have no idea what I've done. So that was my introduction really from really early age. And then, go to school, get into a couple of bands with some guys that were like older than me because they were cool and I wanted to play music, and started playing a bit with them, and they introduced me to, like, we're talking like 13, 14, they introduced you get introduced to Radiohead and Muse, and they're your kind of entry points of alternative music. Because till then it's honestly a child, and 97, 98, I'm a young girl that's into Spice Girls, and nothing fucking wrong with that. I mean, I look back now and go, what a rich tapestry of pop hits they like.
Absolutely.
And how ahead of their time they were actually as a pop group. I honestly so grateful to Spice Girls. So they're sort of start playing in bands, and then playing bands a bit more seriously, start writing a bit more seriously, want to sort of play shows and make recordings. I did all of that in several different bands, and then time goes on, and you just everyone goes different ways, and you get tired of not making anything of it, and everyone falling out, and I don't know, then no bands anymore.
What do you think? What do you think is the real from the kind of people that you gravitated towards? The ones that were sort of playing in the bands that you joined. What? Excuse me. What do you think you learned from them?
I definitely learned, do you know what I really learned, looking back, is to trust myself as a writer. I used to hang around it was the sixth form guys that I always played in bands with that were very cool guys, right? By all means, and really good. They're really good at guitar. They'd really mastered. They could nail a solo, and they could do stuff, or just any or really good drummers, or really, really, really good musicians that were really good but didn't really write. I look back and go, I can hear old band demos and go, it sounds great, but there's no song there. And I always knew that I was always sketching things, and I always knew I was writing things. I just didn't, you don't believe in yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm not a cool masterful. I'm not a cool guy in a band, and I was really geeky, nerdy, not cool person. And so,
I'm with you on that.
And so you don't feel that you've got the soul to be these things, but then you look back and go, actually, I think I was writing stuff that was all right, and so they actually taught me that I can write music, because what I couldn't do was nail a Def Leppard solo, but what I could do was write something that I felt and communicate it, and it was original. And I'm grateful to being in those bands for that, because maybe I would have looked at music, I don't know, maybe I would have always looked at it differently had I wanted to nail the Def Leppard solo, I don't know.
It's funny, isn't it, that those that I was when I was a kid, maybe about 8 or something like that, and it's funny how little events in your in your childhood, just in big events, but sometimes little events, just they stay with you, and sometimes you don't realize that they stay with you until years and years later. But I realized that there's some things that happens, like some things that, like my dad not trusting me to do some things, it decimated my self belief.
Right.
Just things
Yeah.
like, I'm an only child, right? And so I always felt like the spotlight was on me and stuff like that. And when you don't think, okay, did they believe me in that? It stayed with me, and it really affected my self belief. So I think for, what you're saying there, that people around you helped you with your self belief, that what you're doing has got, is good, it's got value, you should carry on doing it. It's great. I think those are really important times to have.
I think it's funny as well, because it gave me that as an adult. It didn't give me at the time. It absolutely
Mm,
knocked me. I was absolutely like, I'm not
yeah,
this, therefore I'm not anything. But then
yeah,
as an adult, I look back and go, but you spent your time writing things that nobody else was writing. And
yeah,
that's now turned into my career. So I'm really
yeah.
grateful for that. But yeah, it's always a hindsight. At the time,
Time.
that stuff's just painful at the time. Like,
Oh, it's terrible, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah.
All you want to do is just to, be amongst that kind of gang that you sort of admire, and just to be doing the things that they're doing and all that. And then,
Oh, absolutely. It's like
but
the yeah.
there's this like this thing that's holding you back. It's like, oh, I can't do that. I'm not one of them and all that. Oh,
Yeah.
awful.
And then you get to be an adult and you look at all the outsider kids and go, you're the one that's gonna have a career. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
like, yeah.
So the would you like when you grew? I mean, were you a kind of curious kid? Were you always like interested in things and asking kind of questions?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I'm the youngest of, like, I've got two siblings.
Mm,
And like I say, it was my dad that brought us up, and so
yeah,
um I was, but also, like, I think that I look back, there's just an element of like, just get on with it. I've got my hands full. I can't keep an eye on it. Like, so I think I was in my own way. Like, I've always done my own thing. I've always just been in my own world a little bit. And sort of still am as an adult. I mean, I've created Billy Nomates so that I can stay in that world. And that's yeah, that's just part of, I think that's just part of who I am. But yeah, I've always been curious about stuff. I've always been someone that wants to, like, walk the long way round, or
mm,
speak to the person that no one speaks to, or
mm,
I'm curious in that way. Like,
yeah, yeah,
and that stayed with me. Like, if so, like, I still try and look for. I mean, it doesn't serve me always, because I'm quite an empath. And
yeah,
if you're an empath, you know how dangerous that is sometimes. But also,
yeah.
yeah, it does me, like, I like to speak to everybody. I like to
Mm,
I like as much as I don't like people, I really like people.
yeah. I mean, it's an interesting. I mean, I'm an introvert, and I guess over my life, I've had to learn to live with it, and well, deal with it, and but there's still some situations I'd rather not be in. That make me feel, oh God, like, right, if I've got to walk into a room and there's a load of people that I don't know, it's just like, oh my God, that's like makes me cringe.
Yeah,
Um, but there's still that. I think I think I still do have that sort of curiosity, and but that it makes me think that being an introvert, there's sometimes like there's a huge amount of like knowledge that introverts don't perhaps pass over to other people, because they don't have the right space to do that in. The spaces
yeah,
aren't they're a bit intimidating. So I
yeah.
think for you to do that, to go and speak to people who sometimes you get a sense that, okay, this person may not have the right environment to be able to speak up or to talk about things that they're interested in. They need those spaces.
They need the spaces, but and sometimes it's not even about being given the space. Sometimes you can be given the space, you just can't communicate it. Because
Communicate. Yeah.
I've been there. I've been in the space and gone, okay, what do I do? I know what I feel. I know what I want to say, but I can't communicate. And luckily for me, like being able to write songs now, pretty much for a living, has addressed that. That's my communication now. But day to day, oh my God, I'm a mess. Like anyone that knows me will tell you, like, I just don't communicate anything. It's terrible. It's really bad. And I think songwriting has actually been, it's like, it's filled that gap. And sometimes the things that you need to and it's like anyone that does any kind of art, it's way before money. It's a tool. It's a survival tool, and way after money, it's a survival tool. Yeah.
Do you feel that, in a way, that Billy and Tor are separate people or different personas?
No, I don't. I've never thought that. I just have always seen it as Tor is driving Billy Nomates. So Billy Nomates is a car in a garage.
Yeah, okay.
Perhaps amongst other cars. And I just get in and drive that one sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's armor, it's protection. It's like, it's a shield. It's a stage persona, but it's driven by me. And that's I've never really seen it as, at one point, I think when I first started, I liked the idea of maybe it being like a character, like with Alice Cooper or someone that has really leaned into that. I kind of like that idea, but then it became very clear straight away that it was far too entwined with who I was and what I was. It became far too, the crossover was too much. So I just go, no, it's just that car that I'm driving.
This is still me.
Yeah.
It's a vehicle to help you with communicating what you're feeling, I guess. Which is totally right.
Yeah, it's just a vehicle, and it's just also, like I say, it's just a bit of armor. It would be terrifying to tour as Paul Maris. No. It's not, no, we can't do that, no. But Billy Nomates, it's like, there's a bit more of a license there to lean into the most. I see Billy Nomates as like just a really extreme place, because it can be incredibly soft and nuanced, or it can be absolute explosion. And like that's the scope of it, and that's the license that it gives me. And I would have that license as Tor. I would have that license as a person, but I don't know. You go on a stage and it's like, there is something that happens to have a bit of a shield for me. Yeah.
How do you feel when you're going on stage? What's sort of going through your mind?
Terror.
So, yeah.
Yeah, terrified. Yeah. Always terrified. Yeah. I said to my manager, like, she'll sometimes say like, "Oh, how'd the gig go?" And I'll be like, just felt like I was free falling for like an hour.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow. And so there's elements of like, this is great, and then there's elements of like, am I going to die in a minute? Like,
oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, it's extreme. But it's it's been fun to do it that way. It's like, it's very under rehearsed, Billy Nomates, and that probably doesn't come to a surprise to. That probably wouldn't come as a surprise to a lot of people. But it's really not this thought out thing. I know I've written the music and I've sat with it and I know it, and then it just plays out. And I've always quite liked that about it.
Yeah.
Like
I completely agree. I think I'm gonna like say two words that probably could get really overused, like authenticity and relatability. They get really overused, but and as often happens with like some words just become like buzzwords. But I really think that approach, or just that's just the way that you are. That's the way that you work. It gives it that, it makes it feel like that, because that's what it is. It's you. It's not, it's not manipulated. It's not manufactured. It is you. And I think that is really important. That's why the music that you make is so great, and why it helps people to understand themselves.
Really cool if that is the case, like if people do find themselves in stuff. I mean, that's always your aim. Like, first and foremost, that's my aim as a writer, is to write something where somebody else slots that into their life and it helps them make sense of something in their life. Because that's the music that stays with me, is like someone's written so, because you go, that's, and in a way is like some things, it's like I stuck on I can't remember the album now, but an old My Bloody Valentine the other day, and it's pure nostalgia for me from sort of early teens. And I feel like those songs belong to me. I feel like they were written for that part of my life. And if I could ever write anything that slotted in someone's life, I mean, what a privilege to be a part of that, because it's so profound. Putting that album on the other day, I was just back. I was 14 again.
Yeah,
and like, yeah,
I think it's incredibly powerful for a piece of music to be able to do that, where it kind of transports you to a particular time in your life when you just think you just taken right back to it, and then that this is what it means to me.
Yeah.
Whether those feelings are good or bad, whatever kind of memories, but it that's the power that it does, and you get. I think you really get that through that authentic approach. I hate to use that word again, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, it is true though. It's like, if you are really willing to be honest and feel honestly and speak honestly, then you are going to capture something amongst other humans, because the likelihood is that they felt it well.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. That if you're feeling it, somebody else is going to feel it as well.
Yeah, and it's all relevant. Like I think about some stuff on. I mean, I don't know how it will go down because it's not out just yet, but there's some stuff on Cacti where some of the feedback I've had is people have really related to things that I go, really? So specific to me, though. Like, how on earth did you? Wow. Okay. Fuck. It probably wasn't that specific to me then.
That's mind blowing, isn't it? It's mind blowing. What do you think? This is just about me. This is what. Wow. Somebody else is feeling it.
How on earth do you know what that means?
Yeah.
That's an odd, very specific event in my life that triggered that. Like, so whatever, but it's the great thing about music though, is that it can do that. And
you mentioned a short while ago about being an empath. This the way that you write and what you write about, is that the empath in you coming out as well?
I think so. Like, I think Cacti has really lent into the good and bad parts of being an empath. Because it's not always healthy to have an empathic view. And I've not really, I don't really shy away from talking about that or feeling that. Because you think it's this noble thing to be like, oh, I feel, I want to help people and I feel people's pain and this, that, and that. And then you go, oh my God, it's not that healthy. And also it's not that noble.
Mm.
And you have to really look at that. It's a real double-sided thing.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, really, like it's really complicated. And you have to have a bit of I'm sort of just learning now to put a little bit of a shield upon that and sort of learning to understand empathy as a nice thing, but also it has to have empathy without boundaries is like a disaster.
It can be really damaging.
A disaster, yeah. And just not trying to solve other people either. That's something that I've really come to terms with now, is like, I think sometimes the empath in you goes, I can fix people. And you're like, who the fuck are you? You're like,
who the fuck are you to fix my problems?
Who the fuck are you? Who the fuck do you think you are? And like how that can be misinterpreted, and then how it's not empathy is very multi-layered thing that isn't always this nice thing.
No, I completely agree with you. I think sometimes it can be I fully agree with you. It comes from a good place, but its application, if it's not understood properly, is dangerous.
Comes from a good place, you think.
Yep.
You can you can also put a magnifying glass on that and go, how good. You're like, really? What, you're doing that because you think are you a really good person? Why are you why are you really focusing on somebody else's life? Why can't you focus on yours? Sometimes it's that, you know. Like,
it does make you think about the generational impact of you know, kind of traumatic events or whatever that leads through to, you know, somebody being an empath and wanting to fix other people. Like, okay, well, what's really going on here? That you're right, you know, you kind of like dig away. What's kind of great? Is this really coming from a good place? What is the motivation?
What is the motivation? And then it's like I say, you know, it's really fucking complicated.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
And then you go, because you can then go down the road of becoming a martyr, you know, and being kind of like.
I think my mum had a little bit of that in her. You know, the kind of martyr. I mean, she was brought up on a farm, you know, on a sort of working farm, and she spent a lot of her life, you know, kind of like doing jobs for other people, for family, for close friends, and stuff like that, almost to you know, at the expense of other things.
Yeah.
You know, becoming like really sort of consumed her, I think, you know, without her really knowing it. And it's sometimes with hindsight, you look back and think, and then I think, fuck, I've got some of that as well.
Yeah,
I've inherited some of those genes, you know. It's
like, well, I'm very similar. Like, my dad sort of lived for everyone else but himself, and you do. It's really, you have to, like you say, the generation, and then the generation after me and after that, we'll have to keep looking at that and developing and evolving it.
And evolving it.
The root of that, like, and like, I think, you know, society now does look at all the big stuff and question it, which we never have before.
True.
Like, which is good and bad. Sometimes, every now and then, I'm just like, let's not. If we overanalyze that, we ain't ever going to get anywhere as humanity. But then other things, I go, no, it's right that we look at that, because like the fact that, for example, men of a certain age, the suicide rate is so high because there's that generational thing of men don't talk about their feelings. Like, fucking yes, let's address that. Absolutely. You know, or, you know, basic patriarchal things or basic absolutely, let's have those fucking conversations. Breaking gender, fuck it, why not? Like, you know,
totally,
all of that. And then, but then you know, also, it's just all a double-edged sword, isn't it? You know, like, and we start looking at ourselves, we understand our like purpose and being and all this shit, and it messes us up because we go, I don't want to, I maybe shouldn't know how this stuff works. Like, if I know too much, like, If I know the thing I'm doing is the thing that destroys me, does that make it better? Like, it's like with mental health, you know, when we talk about like the word with mental health is always awareness, you know.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, I'm aware my foot's on fire. Doesn't change the fact. I'm just aware of it. Is that going to drive me even more? Am I going to lose my shit even? Like, I can't fix it. It's on fire. I know it's on fire. What do I do now? Like,
what do I do? Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, sometimes we're so knowledgeable, and we're having these discussions about discussions, and it's good and bad, I think.
That's very true, that actually. And so we I guess we have all this kind of information, and we're sort of reading these discussions, but sometimes you have to filter out all the stuff. But you can then, I guess, in a way, sort of become consumed by analyzing stuff, as opposed to, kind of like using your gut instinct.
Yeah.
What I mean, like for you, what role does your instinct sort of have for you, both in your kind of like in your day-to-day life, plus also in in your music?
It's kind of everything, my instinct, because I live by myself, I work by myself, I manage a lot of my business by myself. Like, the instinct is, if I don't act on my instinct, I've got absolutely nothing. So I'm always having to use my gut feeling on stuff. And I think, yeah, you know, and everyone knows what their gut feeling and what their instinct is. And it's different for everyone. And it again, it's like, it's a complicated thing. I think my instinct sometimes is to just shut up and write, you know, and just, and that's not necessary, and that doesn't necessarily work for a lot of people. And I also don't think it's necessarily healthy, because there's a lot of untalked about, unaddressed stuff in my life that I know culminates in writing and is worked out and soothed by writing. Now, is that a particularly healthy thing now that it's my career and it pays my bills? I don't know. Because I probably should just go to therapy quietly. Like, I probably should just, like, truly just work this out another way. Because also you then don't want to fall into the trap of being like, oh, well, when I'm miserable, like, I do really good work. They're like, I'll just be miserable. I don't want that. Like, I treat that as a human being. Nobody wants that. And you don't want to start associating your best work with abject misery, because you're also a human being that should strive for healthiness and happiness also. It's all and do you know what? They're like, this is a rabbit hole in itself, because the music industry does not thrive on happy, healthy people. Does not thrive on it. Doesn't want to see it. Sick of it. If anything, it's really, I think we're going to see it more and more in the next sort of 5 to 10 years as well, because, for various reasons, the industry's changed in a way that if I turn up off my face to an event now, it's going to get questioned by a lot of people, and I might not be invited back, and someone will probably take my place. If I'd have done it 10, 15 years ago, I might have been really cool, and NME might have written about it. I think it's like a shifting thing, and I think it's going to shift again, because everyone's now going, oh, we're all weak because we're all running our businesses and we take it quite seriously. So we're not rock and roll stars. Well, coming through COVID and stuff, it was like, well, if I wasn't savvy, I just wouldn't have survived. I'd just be back working at a shop. So,
which is an interesting one. Thinking about the where that's coming from. It's coming again from a a system that someone somewhere, or a psyche, a collective, is determining what is acceptable and what isn't. It's almost like that you have like sort of social media that is determining that there are these sort of tech companies that are determining that what you post, how and who sees that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like this control that the industry is having, but also the way to talk about your business, your music career is controlled.
It's weird. Like I've always just felt that about the music industry, though. Is it's like you're sold you're sold the heroin addict look, even by fashion. You're sold the just the torn up, writer is like the most romantic thing you can be.
Yeah.
Like you're sold that, and and you believe it. Like I believed it for a bit, and then you go, no, the torn up, fucked up writer is probably deserves to be really happy, actually, and deserves to feel cared about, and deserves to feel valued. And why on earth, all of it is just a big, and it's not as easy as that. It's definitely not as easy as that. But you just sold that.
It's commodifying artists, isn't it?
Yeah, you're sold the torturedness,
Yeah.
and then you feel kind of penalised sometimes for not being tortured enough,
Yeah.
How tortured are you? Like, how believable is this, And I don't.
How do you navigate through that yourself? Because that I mean, life generally these days takes a lot of like resilience, to do that, which in having that is a good thing in some ways, but also it can mask a lot of other stuff that's going on. Be resilient, be strong, and stuff like that. How do you get through things?
I really try and just I try and spend a lot of time. This is like a really boring answer, but I take like my MP3 player and go to the woods for the day and just hike and take
absolutely,
a sandwich in a rucksack.
Fucking with you on that.
And I'm just leave my phone and mute take WhatsApp off.
Totally.
Go to the woods for the day with like a snack. Take my old MP3 player, so I've got some music, but I can't contact anyone or be contacted. Or get on the train somewhere and go walk around a new place for the day. I don't know. For me, walking in nature. Like, I'm not someone that grew up in cities. I was always living in rural or coastal places, and so what you did some days was and I never had loads of group of friends ever. So what I did was to go and walk with music, and that's how I got to love music and know music, is because that was a thing to do, was to go on a walk with some music. And it still is a thing that I do, and it's massively instrumental to my mental health, to anxiety. I'm quite an anxious person these days, so if I feel my anxiety is really bad, I just know that I just need to turn my phone off and go outside.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't solve everything, but it's a pretty good base layer.
Completely. And
it's the one that I miss when I'm really busy, because you just don't have the time to do it sometimes. But even I'm going to try this year to be more disciplined about it. And even if it's like getting up that extra, on tour, I always try and get up an hour early before breakfast so that I can walk around that city, or if there's a place to go and jog, I can jog around a park, or just something where it's like I'm outside in the fresh air for an hour and no one's owned me yet. Nobody has been able to get at me. Like, I've had an hour to myself that doesn't belong to anyone else. Because I think, it sounds so simple, but it's the thing that we just don't do when we're busy,
I completely agree with you. I mean, the nature thing, I think is really important. I mean, I really I started doing a thing of going into the woods and sort of sitting amongst trees and stuff like that. And I was probably a bit skeptical, but I'd read some stuff about this sort of Japanese practice where I thought that that sounds really interesting, of basically kind of forest bathing and going and sitting amongst trees, and I like, hand on heart, the power that it gives you
It's
is
amazing.
just incredible.
Yeah, and it's like no one wants to talk about it because no one wants to sound like that person that's
exactly.
But it's fucking true. I literally got this tattoo. You can't really see, but I literally got a tree tattoo on my to remind me every day to go and find some trees to be amongst. Which sounds like, again, I don't even care what it sounds like. It fucking works, and we live especially when you live in a city, trees become absolute gold commodity.
Absolutely
Right. Like
absolutely
to go
right.
and just sit under a tree in a park for an afternoon is the absolute rich person's. To me, I'm like, that's wealth at that point.
Oh, absolutely right. That's a really good point. That is what wealth is about.
Yeah.
Having those, and the really interesting thing about trees is this what's it called? It's like the mycelium network. The resource sharing. Not just amongst trees of the same species, but across species as well. Which I just love the idea of that, and think we can take so much from it. Of basically, if a tree's in trouble, it needs certain nutrients that the network gives it to them.
Oh, I mean, like I could talk to you forever about trees. Like trees are like constant source of fascination to me, and I feel really like, I feel really passionately about trees. Like they're just fucking the best thing on earth, and like they're fucking cool, man. They talk. Like they talk to each other and communicate stuff, and like they give themselves diseases and they wipe themselves out. Like humans do that.
I know.
I'm like, oh man, like, there's something so. I mean, the heart of cacti is it's this thing that the earth has created. This is resilient. Like I think of like trees are ultimately resilient, but there is always something about cacti and the nature of what cacti are and the hostility they go through, and everything about them is kind of entrenched in that nature kind of fascination and survival and all the rest of it, and how
absolutely right.
And we are part of nature. Like we absolutely fucking forget it on a daily basis, and it's what and I think it's crazy. Like we go so far in life and we do these things, and we ultimately just forget that we just need sunlight and water fundamentally.
Fundamentally. Absolutely.
Fundamentally. Everything from there is like, okay, food's nice, this is good. But fresh air, sunlight, and water.
It's interesting.
We don't do it
though. I've been reading a bit and sort of listening to a bit more. I think that it started with this an author called Richard Powers, who wrote The Overstory, and then he's done another book. I can't remember the name of it now. And it's basically this. He's talking about this idea, which I've heard from others now, kind of growing, that we refer to us as like it's our life, but it's like actually his argument is that we are life. When we talk about our life, it creates that sort of separation from us and nature. We see sort of nature as a resource to sort of feed us, whereas nature is all about kind of like the cohabitation and stuff like that. I know it's getting kind of like a little bit sort of cerebral, but it's that again, like it helps with I think kind of think more people thinking like that we are all part of it.
We have to think this way. Like, we have to collectively come to this realization, like yesterday, in order to survive. And it's bad because it's like, it's one thing to have conversations about global warming or like anything else, but it's another thing to just, on a very profound level, accept that, like you say, or like with Richard Powers, it's like, we are nature.
Yeah.
It's not
absolutely.
It's not them and us. Like, we are part of it. And until we really get to grips with that, and almost like, I have times where I almost think it's where our knowledge is like really detrimental to us, because nature doesn't sit there and contemplate how it feels. It just is.
It just is.
A wild animal doesn't get anxious, or if they do, it's because it's life and death situation.
Yeah.
You know, like, we're operating anxiety on a day-to-day level over like whether my fucking bills are paid. Well, a lion's not chasing me, so why am I employing those faculties? Like, and then you start thinking, what is that doing to us? Because we're constantly in this state of, we're just these unnatural states that we shouldn't be in all the time. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think you're totally right.
I've got no answers for this. It's just
no, I don't. This is it. I don't know. I mean, I sometimes think I'm working with these sort of ideas, and okay, where do you take them? I've no idea, no fucking idea. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I just think the more if sometimes like just talking about, the more people that sort of talk about them.
Yeah. Talking.
It's almost like, you know, if like sometimes you don't see the end of something, of like, I don't know, like capitalism, for example. You don't see the end of it, but it evolves, it changes gradually, and it's almost like with kind of nature, the way that kind of people think about it and interact. The problem that we've got, obviously, with climate change is that it's something needs to happen, like you said, like yesterday. But if we get people talking about stuff, you know, about generally our kind of relationship, maybe we can help for sort of future generations. But a lot of people just can't think that far ahead.
A lot of people can't think that far ahead, and also, like, not to be a downer, but
you are going to be.
My personal, very sort of in-depth thought on this is that we have fucked it, and it will be about survival at some point. I've always felt it. I felt it since I was a kid, and I only imagine that kids feel it heavily now. Because if we're going to go down to, if we are literally going to go down to a part of nature, like, do you not think nature knows it's on fire?
Yeah.
Like, of course it fucking does. Like,
yeah, totally.
People feel it. So why are we all going mental? Well, it's not just, I hate my job. I honestly feel like it's so much more profound than that. And so, yeah, I don't know. The pessimist in me goes, no, it's over and it's a sinking ship. So how do I enjoy that part until there? Like, because, and how can I help, and what can I do? And how can I be fulfilled as a human? How can I be nice? How can I be aware of stuff? Like, I mean, making a record's a complicated thing. I've just contributed massively to the end of the earth. Like, you know.
But on the other hand, I'm trying to draw this back for you now.
But you know, but that's how you get. You know, I've just and I have worked. You know, I worked with a company. I can't remember the name of the company now, but I've worked with a company that do oversee all the what are they called? I work with a company called Sea Level, actually, on the record, and they do oversee all the carbon footprint of that record, and they make sure that it's as efficient as is currently possible.
Yeah.
So I am worried. I genuinely am worried about that. So I make a joke with it, like, oh, I've contributed, but the fact is, I have. My name's all over that thing that's contributed to it, and I might have to explain that to some grandkids at some point, and they'll go, wasn't that really irresponsible that you made plastic records and just on a mat and put them out into the world? And that, And then, but then, you know, you look at the database and like, because I always thought digital was the way forward, but then apparently the energy it takes to run all of that outweighs anything.
It outweighs anything. Yeah, that's the trouble, isn't it? You start down one route, and then it's like, okay, well, that's not entirely true. And then,
yeah, and I don't think we'll ever probably know how that all works. Well, I don't know.
The true sort of. I think the thing, thing is, what you're doing is you're sort of working with, to the best that you can, with the tools that you've got,
the
tools that you can get your hands on. There are kind of compromises along the way, and but you can minimise the impact of the compromises.
Well, this is it. It's like, it is a compromise because you are part of the modern world, and nature has also created that. Because I sometimes get on that road as well. Go, well, actually, I don't fucking like capitalism, but we did create it, and I do have to live in it. And so there is a part of evolution now developing into, well, actually surviving. That is part of being this nature that you've created, which is it's a total monster of a thing we've done.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
But there is an element of, well, how do you survive the modern world, though?
Yeah. This idea again of nothingism, isn't it? Kind of like reacting, to your to the circumstances and to happenings and to events.
Yeah. No, totally. And until, I don't know, I do fantasize sometimes about getting like a truck and a shotgun at some point and just like, going off the ends of the earth when it all goes wrong. But yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I really appreciate it. That's been so much fun and fascinating to
it's been lush to talk to you. Yeah, thank you.
And best of luck for the record, of course, as well.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
next week I'm sure it'll be a massive success. I'm hopefully, because you're going out on tour, aren't you, in like around Europe?
Yeah, I'm off in March. Most of Europe in March, and then the UK in April.
I'm hopefully should be in Spain when you're there. So I'm going to try and try my best to get to Madrid.
Oh, excellent!
To come
to
that, which would be great. So
cool.
Good luck with that, anyway.
Nice one.
All right, Tor.
Thanks.
Lovely to talk to you. Take care. All the best.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the show, and I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you'll tune in for the next episode. In the meantime, it would be really awesome if you could rate and review the show, and also share it with any friends who you think might enjoy it.